Hello and welcome to Instant Transmission, a podcast where we discuss everything Dragon Ball and more ranking content, baby. Tonight, we've put together some more low-hanging fruit for all of you to enjoy in the form of our own personal top 5 list of the most brutal moments in Dragon Ball. Grab your sensu beans and pray you're important to the plot because tonight is going to be a brutal one. I'm your host, Dayton, and once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Todd.
Hi.
Tonight, Todd and I have decided on a list of the top 5 brutal moments in Dragon Ball, in our opinion. This list is not objective, it's purely for fun, and there are plenty of moments that almost made our list, but narrowly missed. We'll be briefly covering a lot of those moments and other popular ones at the end. So, with all of that covered, was there anything you want to add before we got things started, Todd?
The list is fully objective. It's all correct.
Yeah, honestly, just to kind of ramble for a second longer, we had to debate between so many moments in Dragon Ball before we were able to narrow it to a top 5. And honestly, maybe even after recording this episode, I'm sure I'll be looking at this and going, maybe I should have put this one in, or maybe I could have swapped this one out. So this for me was kind of a tough list to put together.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. We kind of spent probably, the last hour plus figuring out what we were going to do for the top 5, but I think we got a good list. I think there's lots of brutal moments in Dragon Ball, but I think these are definitely top contenders for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got 5 to get through and then even more after that, so I'm not going to delay any more. Here is number 5 in our top 5 brutal moments in Dragon Ball. And this is going to be the moment that Boo decides to slither himself inside a man's body, filling him up until he explodes.
Yeah, this one, when this topic got brought up as an episode, this was one of the first ones that came to my mind. Like, I can't get this one out of my head. Just the idea of having a creature turn into a liquid that forces itself down your throat into your stomach, intestines, whatever, such that your body expands like a balloon until it pops is terrifying to me.
Yeah, and I mean, this really appeals to like that body horror kind of vibe because you see the man, like his guts and inside become really extended outward. He's kind of slouched backwards from the pressure that Boo's exerting from the inside of his own body. His eyeballs are popping out of his head. He's completely not in control of anything that's happening right now. And he's almost just kind of like giving himself into the situation until he ultimately just kind of explodes.
Yeah. This is, I mean, it's so well done in terms of just, like you said, Dayton, kind of like body horror sort of situation. Um, I mean, the guy who gets blown up is a bad guy, probably deserved it, but just what a way to go out. I can't even trying to put myself in that guy's shoes and imagine what it would feel like to expand like that until you burst.
I mean, this is when I think of the phrase like I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. This is the kind of thing that comes to mind where, yeah, I think I agree with you. This was a bad dude, but man, did he deserve this? Like, this is a pretty brutal fate. And honestly, the crazy thing about this one is that it's not like there's a bunch of gore. There's not like blood and guts or anything like that happening. It's just the event itself that's kind of traumatizing. Like, I remember seeing this when I was young and it stuck with me for a long while. This is something that may have appeared in a nightmare or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also something that, like, Dragon Ball has violence aplenty. There's, people getting punched and kicked and blasted with laser beams, and sometimes they get, holes put through them or lose limbs. But most of that is stuff that you could see happening in the real world. This is something that is just pure nightmare fuel. Like, it's not something I there's nothing I can compare it to in the real world. I'm trying to think of something right now, and I'm like, I truly have nothing, nothing that compares to this.
Yeah, that and there's a lot of kind of the moments you were talking about with like bones being broken. There's a lot of assumption that a bone's broken. Like we're kind of told it, and you just have to understand that it's broken. You don't really see. It's not like they've got like bones sticking out of their body or anything like that. Usually, it's just they're holding it or it's sore or they don't walk or use it. This is one of the ones where you actually get to see the effect of the of what's happening in such vivid detail too. It's definitely jarring, especially the moment that this happens, right? We're kind of given this backset of just there's this big fight between I guess you could say good Boo and Evil Boo won, and now we've got Super Boo. So there's like all this other stuff that's happening, and then it quiets down for a minute and it leads into this event. So there's kind of this buildup that happens before this horrible event.
And that's a great point. Is the kind of the context surrounding this event too, in that this is a very good job of playing into the sort of biology and power set that we've seen from Majin Buu already, but it's also it's since we kind of saw Evil Boo win over the fight against Good Boo, I guess. This is a like clear line and indication that this new version of Boo, this Super Boo, is very clearly evil. I mean, just doing something wildly twisted and viscerally murdering this man.
Yeah, so this one made the list. It's our number 5. I don't like even looking at this scene happening, so can we flip the page? Is there anything else we need to talk about with this dastardly deed?
Nope, let's do number 4.
Yes, number 4, which is moving over to Cell now as we get Cell's reveal as he sucks a man dry, and not in that way. This
Hey,
scene, just to kind of describe it to you all, is our first reveal of the villain Cell, where he approaches Piccolo with a overweight man pleading for his life. He offers Piccolo money. He asks to be saved, and right in front of our eyes, in Piccolo's eyes, we see Cell plunge his tail down into the man's body, and we see the life force being sapped out of him as his skin slowly starts kind of like being dragged over his bones. You can see like his bones sticking through his skin as everything kind of deflates around him. You see his head kind of sink in on itself as his eyes roll back and sink into his skull. And eventually he turns into just a completely deflated balloon of a man before finally disappearing. It's a really, really gruesome scene.
this I feel like we keep coming back to this scene on the podcast. This is probably one of my favorite scenes in Dragon Ball period. I mean, you've mentioned it before, Dayton, but this has like great elements of horror to it. There's so much like unknown about this alien looking creature. The This is another one that, much like our number 5, is it's so unlike anything that you'll ever see in the real world. This man's like it feels like he's being melted or truly being drank, like consumed from the inside. I also really love that the guy is like crawling away from Cell. Like there's a moment where it looks like he's going to get away, and then Cell first off stabs him in the back, and the guy has like this expression of like shock. So getting stabbed in the back is bad enough, but then you see the sheer terror and pain on the guy's face as he realizes what's happening to him, and his insides are being drank through the tail of Cell. It is visceral and terrible and awesome.
And this is, we have all the context of Dragon Ball now, but when you first see this, Cell's a very different animal than most other Dragon Ball characters that we've encountered. Most of the other ones are usually, they're out there for power, they're out there for world domination or control or something. This is something truly alien in that we don't really know what this creature's intentions are. And so far, we've been following the androids, and the androids are a threat. We don't know what this thing is. All we know is that it's weird and it's sucking people dry. I I love the way that Cell's handled. I love this reveal, and I love the gruesome moment of watching the businessman kind of be evaporated away before our eyes.
Yeah, same, 100%. Uh, I think one of the details you had mentioned before, Dayton, too, is that the guy's skin turns like this pale gray color as he gets sucked dry. And even like you see his fingers, like his skin is sagging over the bones, but even then you can tell the bones are being sucked dry because his fingers and hands get shown just almost like melting away. Oh, it's again another one that I just couldn't imagine putting myself in that situation and trying to imagine what it would feel like. But boy, did they do a good job of making it visually terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way the skin just hangs over the bones once he's most of the way like deflated. It's such great detail because you can see where, the knuckles are in the hand and the way the skin just kind of connects from knuckle to knuckle and drags in between. Like there's nothing else but the bone holding the skin up. I love it. And this is one of those ones where it's kind of like the Boo one where there's some body horror elements to it, but this one's really trying to get across the fact that this is a bad dude. This is something alien. And it's such a brief little scene. It's only like 45 seconds long or something like that. But I think it does a great job of telling you, giving you a lot of story details, showing it to you without telling it to you. So this is very economic story writing.
Yeah, those are all really great points too. But yeah, I think you could tell we both love this scene, especially in terms of our top five brutal scenes in Dragon Ball. But I think that's pretty much going to move us over to number three.
Number three, yes. And we are sticking with the theme of Dragon Ball Z because this time we're going to head over to the Boo arc and we're going to get Boo killing his master Babidi. Now, this was a scene, I think, when we rewatched Kai, I had this realization. And then when we rewatched it again for this, uh, I realized once again how brutal this scene is because it starts out kind of as menacing as I expected it, right? It's Bobby's barking orders at Boo. Boo's kind of hitting his snapping point. You see a change in his demeanor. And he's like, I have an idea. Like, I'm going to tell you my awesome idea. And Boo's being kind of menacing but playful. And Bobby's like, all right, well, what's in that little walnut brain of yours? And Boo grabs Bobbity by the throat, and you see his eyes open up as he tells Bobbity that he doesn't need him anymore. And you see Bobbity starting to like change colors a little bit because, he's being choked. And Boo decides to just end him right there. He punches clear through his head, which results in this explosion of pinkish, purplish blood to kind of mist through the air. And this part was, I was like, oh, yeah, that was pretty bad. The part that really gets me is there's a moment where Boo's holding Bobbity's decapitated body and the body's twitching and still clawing at Boo's hand for a moment while he sits there and holds him in the air. And it is the most gruesome, like 3 seconds of animation I've seen in Dragon Ball. Like it's awful. And I love it. You don't usually get that kind of detail. Usually it's just kind of a vague hole or just, you assume that something bad happened or some scene that gets across the point. You get all the details here. They didn't spare anything.
Yeah. This one is I mean, it's really good. The specifically I didn't really remember the like twitching headless form of Bobbity's body after getting his head blown away. This was one of the ones that I had to be like, yeah, it's probably on the list. Like a guy gets his head blown off or punched off. Uh, but I had to go watch it again. And watching it again, I was like, whoa, this is way more visceral and brutal than I really even remember it being. Um, the I think it's mostly that the twitching lifeless body because you can see like the ragged flesh of his neck where his head's been punched off. You can see like blood that's kind of dribbled down from the loss of his head, and you see it, his neck, like the stump is almost like twitching or throbbing, and it's, whoa, it gives me chills talking about it.
And we've had moments that are the idea similar, right? Because one moment we had discussed kind of off recording was, I believe it was TN getting his arm like chopped off from him. And the idea of that scene's pretty brutal, but if you go and rewatch it, it actually gets punched off his body. And it's in a way, I don't know, I shouldn't be laughing at it, but I find it kind of a little bit funny that he just had his arm punched off of his body. I don't know
I
what it is
laugh.
about it. It's a brutal scene, but it you don't get that kind of visceral moment like you do in this one.
I truly laugh every time I watch Nappa punch off Tien's arm. But this one, yeah, man, it's like they don't really show. The one thing I'll say is, especially in the anime, they don't show so much like the head being like blown off. It's like a flash of color, and I think it's like red and purple to kind of like show that effect. But it's the aftermath that really hits hard here. And then to say nothing of, just to add to it, Boo just tosses Bobity's body into the air like a shot put and blasts it away with a key blast just to kind of, you know, finish off this brutal scene.
And the scene too, it's also representative of like the chains are off of Boo, right? He's now a loose cannon. We don't know what he is because we don't have Bobbity here to control him. So I like that this is kind of a big built up scene because it's a big moment. It's a shift in our main villain in the story at this point. So I like that we've got something to help punctuate that. I think it's a great scene and it articulates a change in tone in the story that's being told.
Yeah. Yeah, I very much agree. I mean, I like this one. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this one if we want to move on to number 2.
Oh yeah, number 2 is gonna be everybody's favorite. All right,
Ah,
so I know a lot of you probably have guessed that this one was gonna be in here, and you're correct. Our number 2 brutal moment in Dragon Ball is Vidal's fight with Spopovich, and it's hard not to include this one just because of how brutal the fight is, how one-sided it is, and how cruel Spopovich is to Videl. But I think the backdrop that gets lost a lot of the time in this one is also how brave Videl is in front of standing in front of something that's so beyond what she's able to comprehend, right? Like for the DBZ viewer or average Dragon Ball viewer, we're familiar with things like key blasts and flying and all this other stuff. But you're reminded that she's not like really engaged in this universe when Spopovich actually launches a key blast at her and she just doesn't know what to do. She just kind of puts her arms up and takes it to the chin, right? Um so I like that the scene exists. It shows that Videl, I mean, she's tough, she takes a beating, but she's also not prepared for this fight. And we get to see what happens to somebody when they're not prepared to fight something truly evil like Spopovich is.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is it's a tough one to talk about. I know a lot of people in the fan base are do not like this scene. Um Videl, I mean, like you said, Dayton, Videl is, she's brave here. She's a martial artist. She's doing everything in her power to try to stand up to Spopovich and just does not want to give in. Uh,
You even have the moments where Videl punches Spopovich's head to where it, like, does like a 180. She basically breaks his neck, but he still just keeps on trucking.
yeah, that in particular is like a, if we want to talk about just visceral, I mean, Spopovich's head truly is looking in the opposite direction, looking 180 degrees around, and he grabs his head, stretches his neck up and out like taffy, and like just reseats his head as if, you know, it was no big deal to be knocked around the other direction. That is visceral in itself, but there's so much in this scene of like Spopovich hits Vidal such that she's hanging off the edge of the ring, easily could have like tossed her out, but he grabs her by the ankle and throws her back in, so that he can just continue to pulverize her. And it's one of the it's probably the most brutal beatdown in all of Dragon Ball. It like it can be hard to watch at moments.
The shriek that Videl lets out when Spopovich reaches out and grabs her by her hair and picks her up. I just the voice acting for that is top notch, by the way. Like I can feel that visceral, just like gut wrenching scream that comes from her when it's just like, oh yeah, for all the reasons this scene is hard to watch. I think it's also what makes it an excellent scene, unfortunately. Or fortunately. I don't know. I don't know how to frame it.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way about it. It's there's a lot of stuff going on here that's hard to watch, but also it's like I'm shocked that they put this in what is arguably intended for like young young men, I guess, and it included this sort of like visceral, violent scene. Um, it's hard not to when we're talking about the most brutal moments. It's hard not to include this scene.
Yeah, it's got to make an appearance. I mean, it came to mind right away. I don't think there's any question in our minds that this is a top brutal moment. These aren't our favorite moments; these are brutal moments. So understand the difference.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this one. I did you have anything else about this one, Dayton?
No, because
Okay.
that's going to bring us to our number one brutal moment in Dragon Ball.
Real quick though, should we do we want to go into the honorable mentions or the contenders before we reveal the number one?
Ooh, yeah, that's good content creation. Make them wait. Yeah, let's go to some of the contenders.
So we did have a long, I mean, we had a long list of options that we were kind of going through. There's even a couple that might not even made the contenders list that we should talk about, but there's a bunch in here. I think I mean, people regularly get limbs blown off. Piccolo loses his arm more times than I could count. Nail gets his arms ripped off by Frieza multiple times. Um, Tien gets his arm punched off by Nappa. There's people who get holes either blasted through them or punched through them. Goku does so against King Piccolo, like flies through his torso. Goku and Raditz get holes blasted through their chests by Piccolo's special beam cannon. Um, Goku gets a hole blasted through his like shoulder slash chest by Piccolo in the World Martial Arts Tournament. There's many instances of those. They while they can be brutal, we see it a lot. I don't feel like any of them truly stand out. Maybe like I think Dayton, you mentioned Yamcha getting knife hand impaled by Dr. Gero in the Cell arc. Like that one's pretty high up there, but I don't think it's enough to make the top five.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things or a lot of moments where what's happening is actually pretty brutal, but it's not animated to the degree that it needs to. Like they censor out the blood in a lot of situations or any of the gore, and so you get this really watered down effect on what should be kind of a terrible moment, and it comes off as almost cartoonish in some of these instances, or maybe it doesn't come across as extreme as it needs to. And so we've got a whole bunch of them here. I'm just going to start going down them because we've got quite a few. And this one for me, very well could have made the list. Uh, this is in early Dragon Ball Z when Goku is fighting Uzaro Vegeta. And not only do we get Vegeta stomping on Goku's legs, I'm pretty sure breaking them. Uh, he also gets picked up and squeezed and smushed in his hands, and we get some excellent Shemmel screams in here that are just blood curdling. This was a close one for me. I love everything that's happening. Unfortunately, in Todd kind of brought this up. A lot of this is stuff we see in other areas. We also see Goku get squeezed multiple times specifically. And so this isn't terribly unique when you look at the entire breadth of Dragon Ball as a whole. Also, like the legs being broken, we understand they're broken because we're told they're broken. They don't look broken. And so there's a little bit of, I don't know, brutality that could have been added to this to really bring it up to that next level. But it was a close contender just because there's a lot that's trying to be conveyed here, and all of it's pretty I mean, you even have Goku struggling with the after effects of his Kaioken during all of this too, where his muscles are bulging and his body's like fighting against him. It's just it's crazy.
Yeah, that one was like that's probably like our number 6. That was like a very close contender. My biggest issue is the fact that it happens multiple times, and then like you said, Dayton, the we know that his legs get shattered. I just wish there were a better way to like visually represent that. And the voice acting, just it really ratchets up that one for me in terms of brutality. The screams there are really good. There are a number of instances too with like you mentioned a few that, or you mentioned the idea that some of the instances of brutality can have more of like a cartoonish vibe, and we talked about specifically Frieza getting chopped into pieces by Trunks, where there's not much in the way of there's I think no blood, really truly no gore. It just looks like puzzle pieces that you would piece back together to make Frieza. So it's like it's a cool moment. I mean, a guy gets chopped into pieces, but just didn't sit right as far as like it didn't really feel brutal. It felt more like a badass moment. Um, and then there's scenes like Frieza getting cut in half by his own Destructo disc. There's Cell getting his upper half blown off by a Kamehameha. Um, I'm trying to decide if those ones are less visceral because they are like these alien monster creatures too, but
See,
they
that's the thing is it's kind of like with the Namekians losing their arms because they can just get them back. It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't hit as home for me. Like Cell getting hit by the Kamehameha wave. Well, okay, like he can just kind of grow his body back, which is apparently something that Namekians could do if they just really put their minds to it. So some of that stuff doesn't feel as, I don't know. It could be better, but it's kind of a consequence, but not really. So
right.
it doesn't feel as brutal because you can immediately remedy it. As far as like, well, Frieza specifically being cut by the Destructo discs and being cut by Trunks' sword, the when you go back and rewatch those scenes, it's almost like they just took like a paint can from Microsoft Paint and just put like some reddish color in there and said, "Yep, yep, that's what all the guts and everything look like." So there's not blood or gore or anything. Not that I really need that, but it's also kind of comically watered down to where it takes away from what should be kind of a visceral scene. So it's a little lacking. Badass, absolutely. Like Trunks' entrance is one of the best entrances in all of anime, says 13-year-old me. Um, so that'll never change. But as far as brutal goes, I think it misses the mark a little bit. I don't think it was a scene that was brutal, but I do think it, like you said, I think it was a scene that was badass.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that way about that one. Um some of these two are we judge based on like the context surrounding them. Um the I also want to point out before we move to the last one that the manga regularly is more brutal than the anime. One scene in particular that I think would fit in the top 5 if we were doing more of like the manga take is Gohan killing the Cell Juniors, because in the anime, Gohan is, I mean, it's still brutal in its own right, with Gohan full on like chopping these little alien or monster children in half, sometimes like exploding their heads, but they just, when they get killed, they basically just explode in a cloud of smoke. In the manga, you see Gohan like smashing through their heads. You see their eyeballs getting blown out of their heads. I think you see either intestines or brains getting like shot off the panel in the manga. It is truly brutal.
Well, and right next to that scene, you sent me a page of 16 getting stomped on, and there's a comparison to the anime where it's kind of vague. Like you see his head get stomped, and you see Cell's foot and just some dark colorations. 16's eyes go black. It gets across the idea, but in the manga, however you say it, uh, like, you could actually see, like, his eyeballs popping out and this weird kind of goop that you assume is, like, his blood or whatever just kind of comes spurting out of him. You see his teeth because they're fake teeth, right? You see them go exploding out from the front of him. It's a really detailed scene compared to what we got to the anime.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, so yeah, they. I mean, we're mostly focusing on the anime. We wanted to bring up though that there are definitely some scenes of the manga that are, oh boy, real
Dr.
savage.
Giro grabbing that guy by the neck. Oh my gosh. I didn't know that existed. That was crazy.
That is a big one. In the anime, so Dr. Giro basically grabs an old man in his car, throws him through the roof of the car, holding him by the neck, and then squeezes his neck until he kills the guy. In the anime, that happens off screen. In the manga, you get to watch a panel of him just squeezing the man's neck until there is no neck. Like the head and the body are just separated, which
Yeah.
is savage.
Yeah, that's one of those ones. If they animated that, that would for sure be in the top 5. It's crazy. And it's also another one where it's just a regular guy, right? It's somebody who you don't expect such a horrible fate to happen to.
Yes, yes, 100%. Um, I think that oh the I guess the only other thing that I wanted to mention is well we're about to see a lot of the moments that we picked are focused in Dragon Ball Z. Uh One moment that we did talk about though was Yamcha getting his leg broken in the original Dragon Ball by Tien in the World Martial Arts Tournament. And I think Dayton, you said it best in that that one is it's brutal based on the context of the scene.
Yeah, it's a scene that absolutely came to my mind. And when you're watching Dragon Ball, we're still in the beginning of the adventure. We're still kind of taking a more kid-like take that to everything that's happening. When you get to Tien breaking Yamcha's leg, that's the tone changing and shifting a little bit. We're stepping up the ante with our villains, and you get Tien, who's um, arguably the strongest fighter there, and he's up against Yamcha, who had a decent fight, but obviously gets beaten. But he's laying on the floor of the arena, passed out, knocked out. And Tien takes this opportunity to drive his knee into Yamcha's leg, breaking it while he's unconscious. So there's nothing like this that's happened really in Dragon Ball up till that point. This is one of the first like true villainous things that's happened. Something that's really out of line to what you expect. So at that moment, that is a big deal. It is really brutal, and it's really upping the ante for Goku and Krillin and their upcoming fights. And so I love that scene. I love it within the context of where it happens. Um, but when you start comparing it to the rest of Dragon Ball, it doesn't quite make it to that level. Like Yamcha was passed out, so there's no reaction from him. And all you really see after that is Yamcha is run off on a stretcher and is in the hospital. So you really miss a lot of the visceral reaction that you could have had with this scene.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all true. So I mean it's a great way of shifting the tone for the original Dragon Ball, but I mean Dragon Ball Z really ups the ante when it comes to brutality. Um I think that's most of what we wanted to talk about for the contenders. Is there anything that we missed talking about, Dayton?
No, I think that pretty much covers it all. Or at least all the stuff that I think we should cover. There's a lot of scenes in Dragon Ball. There's a lot of brutal moments, and it's hard to narrow it down to just 5. Um, I mean, Well, I guess the only one I want to touch on real quick is Dodoria, the
Oh
scene
yeah.
you sent me where he's just brutally killing Namekians, even killing a Namekian child on screen, where Gohan's watching and just like at his limit, watching this man just commit genocide.
I like that scene a lot, which sounds real fucking weird because the first thing he does is he just blasts a child with a key blast from his mouth, and they show it on screen. It's not it's not super visceral or gory or anything. It's just a blast that hits the kid, and then the kid's charred on the ground. But it is just an on-screen death of an alien child, and then followed by Dodoria grabbing an old Namekian by the head, and full on, you watch the head get twisted and wrenched around, snapping his neck. So that was definitely on my mind for like the top five. It's brutal.
And killing the child like that, normally, actually, up till that point, you really only ever see like combatants, fighters who are getting hurt or killed or bad things happening to them. This is one of the earlier scenes of a non-combatant being specifically targeted and killed like that. It really is a jarring moment and setting the scene again, right? It's changing the tone. It's letting you know that these aren't just powerful people. They are evil. They are evil down to their bone. They will target and kill children. And so if you want me to dislike somebody, have them hurt a kid. That's all it takes.
It's a great, again, like you said, it's a great way of showing us any sort of like tone shift, showing us who these people are. It's yeah, great storytelling, love it. It's very, very well done. I think that pretty much brings us up to number one.
All right. So, number one, this is going to be our number one most brutal moment in all of Dragon Ball. And that's going to be Gohan getting his neck broken by the Ginyu Force. And this all happens during one of our favorite fights in all of Dragon Ball, which is Vegeta and Gohan and Krillin fighting the Ginyu Force while they wait for Goku to arrive. Well, out outmanned, outpowered, out everything. Uh, they fight their best, and eventually they're all defeated. Gohan getting probably the worst end of the stick when Raccoon dodges over Gohan's very emotional assault, bringing his foot down in the side of Gohan's neck and snapping it. Now, this scene is already pretty like gruesome, right? It's a kid, it's a main character. You're watching this isn't just like a key blast or something. This is you're watching him get kicked in the neck and his neck broken. The thing that really punctuates how brutal this moment is when Goku finally arrives and he has to lift up the nearly lifeless form of his son's body and turn his head over so that way he can actually make eye contact with him. And you just see the tiny little threads of life that still hold Gohan to this realm. I don't know. This is a scene that just really sat with me my entire life. And even rewatching it, it's not just the neck snap. It's Goku trying to cradle his dying son for this moment that just really seems to hit with me.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Like there's even an argument to be made for this being less brutal than the other items that we have on this list. But when you consider that it is a child, the child, wow, he's half human, half Saiyan, so he's got some alien biology in there, but looks human, so it's something that we can very much connect with and relate to. It is while there is something that I really enjoy about like Boo exploding the guy from the inside and Cell drinking the other guy, and the fact that they aren't something that you could see in the real world, there's something that again you can just relate to on a more intimate level of watching somebody just get kicked in the side of the neck, the side of the head, and it's this big hulking muscular man doing it to a small little boy. I mean, we can relate to or understand all of the events that are happening here, and then watching, I think the actual kick to me is not what makes this brutal. Uh, Watching Goku pick up his 5-year-old son, his body twitching, his eyes almost like faded, and having to like turn Gohan's head in his hands to even get him into a position where he can feed him a sensu bean. All of it combined makes this our number one brutal scene. It, I will never forget this scene as long as I live. It is like ingrained in my brain.
Yeah, and I mean, it's freaking Gohan, right? This is a character who we've been following up to this point pretty closely in Dragon Ball. We've been looking forward to seeing him kind of step into the role that's been foreshadowed for him, right? And so you almost expect the opposite to happen. You almost expect Gohan to like have like a Raditz moment or something here, and then it just kind of completely 180s it by taking Gohan out of the fight pretty much permanently at this point. It's well written. Um, Raccoon is an awesome villain, by the way. So I like the characters that are involved. So just from a writing standpoint, I like it. Um, and it's emotional. Like that's the thing that I think separates this from the rest of them is that emotional weight that this scene has. You don't. There's plenty of brutal events that happen in Dragon Ball, but this one hits on multiple different levels. It pulls multiple strings at once. And so, while maybe getting your neck broken isn't the worst thing that's happened in Dragon Ball, there's that moment of connecting with that character with the broken neck. It's, I don't know, man. It's that next step. It's almost like Babidi's fingers clawing for life. It's that we're gonna sit here and we're gonna experience this damage, this event for a little longer than maybe you expected to.
That's a really great point too, in that we dwell on what happens to Gohan. There are so many scenes where there's like certainly more severe violence than what happens to Gohan, but it's over in the snap of a finger. It's I mean you see it in a flash and you're like, "Oh, shoot, that was brutal." But we sit on this moment with Gohan. We watch his father grab him and hold him. It is, and I mean we care about Gohan too. Like Gohan's we've watched Gohan grow through the Saiyan arc. We've watched him become more brave. In this moment, you know, when he was too afraid to fight the Saiyans in the Saiyan arc, he's not that way anymore. So we are rooting for Gohan. We like him as a character. We want to see him succeed and we want to see him beat up the bad guys. And so I feel like all of that combined makes this hit harder than some of the scenes that might visually be more visceral and more violent.
Yeah, I agree with every point you made. It, just the way I connect to the scene, the way I can feel, like the emotion coming through the character. Like, I don't know. I think for me, it makes sense that this lands in our number one spot. And you know, you can maybe make an argument that maybe this should be number two. For other reasons, kind of like you mentioned, like if you're looking for that more visual brutality, if you're looking for something that's more violent, there are some of the other scenes are a little bit more of that, but this one has more on more levels, and so that's why this lands for number one for me. And I mean, it's like I said earlier, it has some of my favorite characters in Dragon Ball all in the same scene too. So it's like, I, it's hard for me to find anything wrong with this. Um, it's a great scene. It's very brutal, and I mean, Gohan was probably seconds away from actually being dead. Like, it's wild to think about that. It's wild to think about putting a kid in that situation, like how crazy that is.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean we've talked a lot about this moment. I want to kind of zoom out just a little bit because if we look at the top 5 on our list, every single one of them is from Dragon Ball Z. And this list is covering basically all of Dragon Ball, mostly focusing on the anime, but when we were going through the list, I mean, the original Dragon Ball has some stuff. Like we mentioned Yamcha's leg getting broken. There's a few characters who die. But Dragon Ball Z just ups the brutality and the violence. Like it doesn't, I don't know that I want to say it feels like a different show, but it's definitely a different tone. And I mean, Dragon Ball Z is my favorite of all the Dragon Ball series. So there's probably some bias in some of my choices there too. But I think Dayton, you were pretty much on board with like these just feel like the best brutal moments, and they're all in Z.
Yeah, and I think it really helps kind of illustrate the difference between an original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and how the tone keeps shifting the further along you get, right? Like the stakes go up, and we're not dealing with kids anymore, we're dealing with adults, and this is the situation adults get into. And so as we move along, because Goku, we're following Goku's story, right? Like we're following his life, his progression, his growth. Whether or not you like other characters, that doesn't matter. We're following Goku. And I like kind of seeing that escalation of dealing with, like, okay, well, it's about winning a martial arts tournament. It's like, okay, well, now it's a big bad guy and I have to beat him because he wants to take over the world. It's like, well, now it's not just the world. It's like your friends are dead and you have to bring them back to life. And now you have to save not just your planet probably, but another planet and then the galaxy. And, it just keeps going up and the stakes keep getting higher. And I think that's just the natural progression, right? As the stakes get higher, the situations are going to become more dire, and it just makes sense that a lot of the moments we picked and went through were from later parts of Dragon Ball Z.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the funny thing though is to say that that's not the case with, say, Dragon Ball Super, for
I knew you were going to
instance.
say that.
um, but even and I know you only remember bits and pieces of Dragon Ball GT, but there was nothing in GT that I could think of that was like super visceral. There's a scene of Goku getting like slashed across the eyes, and there's a scene of him like punching a hole through somebody. But nothing that stands out as brutal to me. You know what? There is a scene with Vegeta and Omega Shenron and some impalement, but I still don't think it would make the top five. Um, Super though to me is like it feels so. It feels like it definitely took a nosedive in terms of brutality, and it certainly ratcheted up the tone of this show is meant for children.
Yeah, I think that's why, man, I don't even think we have an honorable mention of Dragon Ball Super, do we?
The only one that we talked about at all was involving Zamasu in the Future Trunks arc.
And that's not even really that's kind of considered like almost like a filler story arc too, so that's kind of dubious whether that counts or not.
It's yeah, I mean Trunks cuts Zamasu in half, and I mean you made some good points about the like Trunks' universe getting truly wiped out and erased, which is like there's a lot of existential crises there to consider, but it's so it's hard to put your fingers on and really like grasp that brutality.
Yeah, it's not something that's displayed on screen, but you can, if you sit down and kind of start piecing through it and thinking about it, I mean, you're kind of implying that like once that story arc wraps up, that all those people in Trunks' storyline that he grew up with, that he was friends with, his family, they're erased from existence, right? And what that means is that he's going to go to another timeline, and these are technically different people than the ones that he grew up with. And not only are the ones that he grew up with like he can't meet them again, they're erased from existence. So even if he went to the afterlife, he still wouldn't meet them again. And it's such a different situation than the rest of our fighters who, if they went to the afterlife, we know how it goes. You wait in line, you talk to some big red dude, and then you go hang out as a cloud somewhere. You don't get like the same interactions in the afterlife as the normal storyline, like the normal universe or timeline people get as Trunks would get. It's really kind of bizarre to think about. It's also why I hate time travel, but either way, I'm stop talking about it here.
Yeah, yeah, fair. I'm usually not a fan of time travel either. The Yeah, I'm struggling. Like, there's a moment where Goku gets his heart stopped by Hit in Super. I, I'm struggling to come up with anything that feels brutal to me.
Well, I mean, there's the idea that the couple of Namekians absorbed their entire planet when they actually really didn't need to. It's kind of brutal.
It's brutal in its own weird way. In a like ironic kind of way. Um, but yeah, and I mean, Daima was very much focused towards a younger audience. There's nothing super brutal in there. I Z is, I mean, Z's. I think you said it, Dayton. Z is the goat. Like, I love the tone of Z. I love the brutality and the violence in Z. And I wish we could go back to what Z was, but I don't know that we'll ever quite get to that level of just the tone, the theme, the writing, all of it. I love all of it.
Yeah, it's Dragon Ball Z felt like Dragon Ball, whereas something like Super, it feels like it's trying to be Dragon Ball. Daima's kind of in the same boat where it's trying to be Dragon Ball. Like we're trying to make a Dragon Ball thing versus I have a story to tell and it's a continuation of the Dragon Ball story and here's what happens. The Super stuff just feels so kind of disconnected from everything. I definitely put it in its own category. If someone wanted to come out and say, "Hey, Super's not canon. This is actually what happens," I'd be like, "Cool, yep, down. Let's do that," because there's things are getting out of hand there. But that's also anyway. I'm going off on a whole different tangent here. We're talking about brutal moments. Super tried to once again lean into original Dragon Ball, which just isn't as brutal, right? Same thing with Daima. They try to lean into the roots, the original Dragon Ball stuff, which just isn't as brutal. And so when you look at all the content we have available, Dragon Ball Z was trying to be something unique. It was trying to be itself. Everything else is trying to be original Dragon Ball, or at least be influenced by it.
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah, and I drug us a little bit off into the weeds there, but Z has just some incredible brutal moments, stuff that is like especially for a show where people I mean say that it's intended for a younger audience, even Z, it slips in things that you're like that is not something that I would expect to show in a children's cartoon. Uh so it's one of the reasons why I loved it growing up because it was so different from everything else. Especially like American cartoons and stuff like that.
Well, and it was a
But
show that the brutal moments are kind of sprinkled in, right? It's not like every episode something crazy is happening like that. It's we get some fights, someone might get roughed up a little bit, bloody lip, the shirt might get torn off or something. You're getting minor scrapes and cuts and some big punches or some key blasts or something. But when something really devastating happens, it hits you because you almost don't expect it. Things are almost always okay, or it's just like an explosion killed that guy. You don't really see what happened. When you see someone get their neck snapped and they make like that, that celery stick like breaking in half sort of sound, it hits you because they don't do that all the time. And I think that's a good thing. You can really appreciate the moments that they're trying to draw your eyes and ears to.
that's a great point. That's it reminds me of like horror movies where it's sometimes they're more if they reserve those like scary or awful moments, they definitely hit harder rather than just having them back to back to back to back. You kind of become desensitized to it, and I think Z does that very well in keeping those moments reserved so that they are more impactful.
Yeah, it's if everything's brutal, then nothing's brutal, sort of thing, right? If everything's visceral, then nothing's visceral. It's choosing when to apply those standards, and Dragon Ball does a great job. Almost, actually, I'm not gonna say almost every scene because I think it is just about every scene they decide to be brutal. Uh, it's a good decision. I think Toriyama does a great job of trying to illustrate important points and moments when things do need to be kicked up to that next level. It's not gratuitous at all. And yeah, I mean, that's why I love the series. That's why I remember these moments, is because he savored kind of those best bits for those moments.
Yes. Yeah, I very much agree with that. I I don't have a whole lot more to say here. Was there anything else that
Me
you wanted to
neither. I think we
cover?
got sidetracked a little bit there, but
I know, I
it all
zoomed us
worked
way
out.
out. Yeah. um but yeah, I think those are basically our top 5 brutal moments in Dragon Ball. I think that's going to be it for this episode of Instant Transmission, where we discuss everything Dragon Ball. This has been your host, Todd.
And Dayton.
Don't forget, we're on Patreon and Discord. If you want to fill us up until we explode, you can find us at patreon.com/ITDB podcast.
Bad reference. We're not doing that one again. Nope.
The Discord link will be in the episode description, but you can also find it in all of our other links at linktree/ITDB podcast. And also, if there's any brutal moments that we didn't cover, I mean, find us on Discord, find us on, put a comment on Spotify, YouTube, whatever, wherever you're listening to us at. We'd like to hear what you guys have to say as far as the most brutal moments as well. But be sure to join us next time, as we can't get enough of Frieza's family in The Return of Cooler. Not even the surface of the sun can stop Cooler, as he returns with the power of the Big Getty Star and a body that would surely make the creators of Terminator 2 sue for copyright infringement. Will Cooler's new power-up allow him to defeat the Saiyans for good? What is the Big Getty Star, and where did it come from? How many times will Vegeta get kicked in the dick? Find out next time. And to all our fellow Dragon Ball fans, stay safe out there, and remember to keep rocking the dragon.
I was going to talk about shows that did gratuitous violence, that I realized that I've only ever seen Berserk, but then I realized that I've only seen Berserk season 2 and they didn't finish that. So I have really bad context for that.
Maybe that'll be another episode.